Kenjaku is one of the most infamous villains of the recent anime and manga sphere. In 2022, he had a run so good, people were even wondering if he was the true final boss of JJK, and even drew comparisons to Sosuke Ice. But let's get into Kenjaku, the genius who overachieved. The first we see of Kenjaku is with the disaster curses. Jogo wants Kenjaku's help in meeting their ideology of reversing the roles of curses and humans, and that curses are the truest, purest form of humans, because they don't bullshit around and hide how they feel and all that type of stuff. Jogo is the most emotional one about trying to pull this off, as he's normally the voice for them. Now mind you, during this whole relationship or alliance, whatever you want to call it, Kenjaku doesn't give a fuck about any of these beautiful bastards that we have presented here. He strikes the deal with them to seal Gojo and make Sukuna an ally of sorts. Looking back at this, it's insane that in order to create a true shift in the Jujutsu world, you have to do something regarding the two strongest characters in the verse. Gojo versus Jogo takes place, and of course what happened, and Gojo gave Jogo his first viral moment. And after the fight, he's seen in the forest with Hanami, and we get the first sign of how both the disaster curses feel about one another, and Kenjaku's selfish motivation. Kenjaku asked if Hanami's gonna help save them, and if you curses feel affection for one another. Hanami goes to save Jogo, but before doing so, she said something to Kenjaku that caught him off guard. It said, "Big talk, know your place, cursed spirit." This made it clear on how Hanami, Jogo, and in Allegiance Dagon view Kenjaku. They know it's a temporary alliance, as Kenjaku doesn't value them even as curses, and this shows how much of a problem Kenjaku now is, because he is a special grade, but he looks at them as just strong curses and nothing more than just objects or weapons to be his pawns, not even worried about the thought of them betraying him or doing something that would negatively affect him in the long run. Which, once we arrive into the later arcs of the story, it makes it very obvious as to why Kenjaku didn't rate them too highly compared to others. In Dagon's domain, which is their hideout and a place for Kenjaku to stay away from being seen or detected by Jujutsu High, we get the Mahito element of this whole thing. It's a little different with Mahito compared to the others, because in the small interactions we get of these five, Kenjaku never showed any malice or other emotion when with Mahito. He kind of just matched whatever Mahito was giving off, mainly because he's gonna need Mahito more than any of the curses in this plan. With Jogo defeated relatively easily, Kenjaku simply let Jogo feel overconfident, comparing them to Gojo earlier in the restaurant. The worst gaslighting I've ever seen in a long time. They know they have to go about other means in order to corner Gojo and seal him. The next time we see Kenjaku is in the Versus Mahito arc, playing as the Shadow in this part of the story, as his role is very minimal, but he's simply shown in panels to allude to the fact that everything is going according to plan. The Shibuya Incident arc is the arc that solidifies Kenjaku's status, that he's one of them ones. In Mahito versus Mekamaru, when Ken and Mahito went to go tie up some loose ends with Mekamaru, Ken in this battle really didn't do much. Specifically two things. One, lay down a barrier to keep Mekamaru from escaping and stopping Mekamaru from sending a signal or from possible Jujutsu High sorcerer sensing the cursed energy. The second is literally just his presence being there. Near the end of the fight, Kenjaku notices Mekamaru's strength potential with the ultimate Mekamaru. Even though temporarily he has a special grade damage output, he still has some flaws. I guess you could say humanity's peak being tested really interested him, especially after Simple Domain was shown to be effective against Mahito, proving it can be effective even against someone like Gojo. Subtle hints I see for something soon to come. The Shibuya Incident arc is where Ken and friends help completely shift the vibe of JJK. While Gojo versus the disaster curses took place, Kenjaku was just coasting for time to use the prison roam. There was also a weird interaction with Mei and Kenjaku, because Mei saw him before anybody did, and she recognized the body, and she was going all over the possible theories of why Geto's quote unquote alive. It looked like they were getting ready to battle, but Wee teleported himself and Mei to Malaysia to get out of the way, and I'd be heated up found out one of our allies just said fuck it, they're just gonna go on their own, and went to another country in the middle of this chaos. Although based on what happened, I kinda can't blame her. The time has come for Kenjaku to make his grand entrance and achieve step one of the plan in sealing Satoru Gojo. Gojo locks eyes with the prison realm and sees his best friend's body. Confused and conflicted about what's going on, he feels something is off. His eyes see Geto, but his soul knows it's not him. Kenjaku was the first person to exploit how to corner Gojo by simply challenging his humanity and his ideals for being strong. Gojo's peak is when he's alone and only worrying about his opponent. But when innocent bystanders or even other sources around him, He stifles his lethality, especially when going against special grade curses. Yuta is mentioned in the middle of this, and Kenjaku at this point isn't worried about Yuta at all, and that Yuta won't be the next Gojo Satoru. He's purely going off of the knowledge of Volume 0 Yuta that fought Geto, which he would be correct if it's the same Yuta. But damn, did he undervalue how much Yuta grew by the next point that they met. Gojo is sealed, and now the villains can try to achieve step 2 of the plan. Make a Sukuna an ally. Amidst the generational violence and chaos that took place, Jogo failed initially at making Sukuna an ally, which Kenjaku, however, didn't need Sukuna to continue his plan for Shibuya. Kenjaku doesn't pop up again until the end of Yuji vs. Mahito. While one wolf is evolving and becoming the hunter, a bigger and more experienced carnivore was looming over him. Mahito is on 1 HP right now, and before Yuji could deal the final blow, he got swarmed by centipedes and slammed to the ground away from Mahito, leaving Kenjaku to reap the benefits of his plan. He absorbs Mahito, and he felt that he was betrayed, and adds him to his collection of cursed spirits, only to be used immediately afterwards via auto transfiguration, rendering the barrier that Tengen held over all of Japan useless. Now curses can roam freely, and vessels can become sorcerers. He has a brief fight with Choso and some of the others. The anime expanded on the fight and added more sequences. It was dope. It made their first encounter post Choso learning that Yuji is his younger half brother hit just a little bit harder. Urame joins Kenjaku's side only for the sake of Sukuna, and Kenjaku looks at Yuji as he leaves them with a bunch of demonic looking curses. And I'm guessing Kenjaku watched the eclipse before he pulled up to Shibuya, and says he expects great things from Yuji. It says to Sukuna that the head heir is returning as the golden age of cursed techniques is emerging. Now still to this day, I'm still gonna believe that Kenjaku being Yuji's mother is still one of the most insane, like nut ass concepts for our MC to come out in a long time. I'll just say that.
Imagination is more important than knowledge. The true sign of intelligence is not knowledge, but imagination. Imagination is everything.
But it's time for the culling games, and this is Kenjaku's time of feeling like the focal point of the whole story. Crafting together this countrywide ritual set out to put together this ultimate goal of combining humanity with cursed energy in its peak form. Creating a merger, a theorized beast that will absorb all cursed energy from the sorcerers and non-sorcerers, making it like a giant unearthly calamity. While Yuji and the gang are running a gauntlet of fighting sorcerers to gain 200 points in order to add rules to the culling games, and at least stop the ritual from taking place, in the midst of the 5 sections, Kenjaku is only brought up twice. Once in Mega Me section, confirming Kenjaku isn't close to any of these people that are sorcerers brought back or just brought in. And in Yu's section, because he let Kurushi, a special grade bug curse, lay dormant in the Sendai colony. It's still kind of nuts that he just had something like this chilling in his inventory. Like, could you imagine if he let this thing out in Shibuya? It would have been game over for anyone not named Sukuna, Gojo, or Maharaga. On to one of the best fights in the series, and also one of the most controversial. Kenjaku finally engages Choso and Yuki in the Tomb of the Star. Kenjaku versus Choso section was fucking gas. The whole scenery was amazing, and when this gets animated, I know it's gonna be a dope vibe for these moments. The Senyata barrier being manipulated to the point you can create whole makeshift rooms was a really cool concept, and I would forget to do the whole movie theater conversation with Choso and showing his in-game plan. This fight between Choso and Kenjaku was a story of one-way hatred and disappointment. Choso hates Kenjaku for what he did to his brothers, and Kenjaku's disappointment of how Choso and his brothers turned out, and how the original experiment was for them to be way stronger than what they looked like. He simply outclasses Choso in every way possible, and most of this is Choso trying to land a hit. Choso tried literally every trick in his bag to land a blow, even having an awakening of some sort, being able to channel Eso and Kechizu's power onto him. We knew Choso didn't stand a chance, but something about a character like Choso, who isn't weak at all, but Kenjaku was just that powerful, seeing the struggle to not only land a hit, but to force Kenjaku to use a technique he's hid from them. And after he thought he landed a punch and it was blocked by a cursed spirit, he trapped Kenjaku to launch a compressed blood right near his head. And he realized, oh shit, I probably shouldn't be hit by this, and uses the gravity curse technique. And in comes Yuki Tsukumo, and makes it clear this woman is top 5 just off the curse technique alone. Manipulating mass to an infinite degree is fucking ridiculous, and to show just how ridiculous she is, she completely no-diffed a special grade curse, and this special grade curse specifically objects the concepts of other curse techniques. Not only did Kenjaku get his shit pushed in, but this is the first time he fought someone with no knowledge of what they can do. So everything he did, he thought of on the fly. Although he's gonna have to think a lot faster now because she broke both his arms. Man, I remember during this fight, we all thought Kenjaku had Idol Transfiguration, but then Yuki shut that down by saying he only uses the cursed spirits he's absorbed once. If he uses their curse technique himself, the Yuki versus Kenjaku battle of ideologies is more so that they both know the source of change in JJK, but they contrast in everything regarding how to go about it. One wants to break away from curse energy, eliminating all curses. The other wants to optimize it and absorb all of it into society. Both high IQ fighters, it's just one happens to be a little more proactive and more tricks in his bag. Domain expansion, room profusion. Yuki and Tengen's conversation about bears in the Tomb of the Star and Kenjaku's bear technique skill just felt like she was screwed going against him if she didn't use her domain going against his or try to do a standstill. That plan of Tengen dispelling Kenjaku's domain aged like milk because she didn't know Kenjaku can use an open barrier domain. Yuki's simple domain got ate up and she's in critical condition. This fight right here basically told you without telling you Kenjaku surpassed Tengen in barrier techniques, leaving her unable to do anything to help Yuki except open and close the Senyata barriers. Broken down to another floor of the tomb, we got where the controversy takes place. Garuda stands up and signals Yuki isn't dead and she's not going to heal, she's going to keep applying pressure. Choso flies in and rejoins the battle and he's ready to fight his mother. Point blank piercing blood slices the top of Kenjaku's head off, but the brain is still active. More of Kenjaku's more impressive durable feats. Defending with no panic in a 2v1 and uses gravity to put a stop to their combos, Yuki made the gravest mistake you can make with Kenjaku, and that's undermining how resourceful he can be. Quick close combat exchange and he blocks one of Yuki's strikes and holds it while the other arm loads up a mini Uzumaki. That goes right through Yuki's stomach and cuts her in half. At this moment I felt a disturbance in the air because an unhealthy amount of coke just reigned over me. On the brink of death, Yuki activated self-destruct, which is releasing all the mass she has created and made a black hole. That if it weren't for the Tomb of the Star, God only knows how much this would have affected Japan as a whole. Straight destruction being sucked up only for Kenjaku to pull the biggest, most convenient Uno reverse I've ever seen. That gravity he used earlier was the reverse of the anti-gravity system that he obtained from Yuji's mom when he took over her body. Yuki's sacrifice wasn't in vain though, because at least she saved Choso and he'll have his moment at a later date. Major W for Kenjaku because he handled fighting a special grade with no knowledge of what their curse technique was better than anybody. And afterwards, talked his shit to Tengen and absorbed her. At this point, Kenjaku was on cloud 9 because he felt untouchable, and even though for Yuki's character it hurt a little bit seeing her go out like that in a flash, this made Kenjaku as a villain feel like one of them ones. Post-culling games and into the Shinjuku showdown, Kenjaku was basically on chill mode for a little bit, letting Sukuna just feast in his festival of chaos, mainly because this arc isn't about him. Kenjaku plays the role of shadow final boss, the one that isn't as strong as the main threat, but you can't let him walk around freely or treat him lightly, because he can cause a problem as great as the true final boss. Kenjaku's roaming around the colonies with the remaining players and is just off on them to hurry up with the ritual in the culling games, while the game tried to fight Sukuna in his beginning stages. He fights and smacks up Hazanoki. I mean, this dude stood no chance. No dipped him and sucked him dry. But the true special grade Calamity pulled up to stop him, Fumihiko Takaba, and this fight, I'll say this, is definitely not for everyone. I think this is something that will purely work for the anime though, because there's 2 chapters out of this 4-chapter fight I liked, and the other I just felt like I was out of the loop in terms of the comedy used. Takaba at first is just confusing Kenjaku because of how ridiculous the concept of his curse technique was, and it was enjoyable seeing Kenjaku have these humanizing moments that make you laugh or just entertain you in these sections. And I love when Kenjaku quickly figured out how to counter Takaba and has to take his joy away, adding logic and structure to his trash-ass comedian lines and giving him critical judgment in the middle of a fight. Comedy is essentially an escape of what's going on around you in life, and to just take time away to laugh and take your mind off of problems. The counter to that is simply by bringing him to reality. They have a whole comedy show type of battle to see who's funnier in chapter 242. Shout out to the Yu Yu Hakusho reference. And in the following chapter, they do a stand-up duet, and Kenjaku wins by satisfying Takaba's need for laughter. And Takaba won for making Kenjaku laugh. This was as ridiculous as it sounds, only to find out this was all a part of a plan by the game to distract Kenjaku long enough for Yuta to swoop in and, with the assistance of Todo, slices off Kenjaku's head and claims victory. Kenjaku's last moments was him admitting all the cursed spirits inhabited in his body and swarming the area Yuta was in, with the final chess move from Kenjaku being he gave Sukuna Tengen's body and the control over starting the merger. And after that, Yuta pierces his brain for one last time, and Kenjaku is gone from the world. So my thoughts on Kenjaku as a villain is that I think he's kind of borderline between S and A. I kind of now have him as like a A- type of tier villain, mainly because his ending, I kind of wish it was a little more emphatic, I would say. Now granted, I will say I really wanted that Yuta versus Kenjaku rematch, but I do understand there is some flaws with that, because if Kenjaku and Yuta had like a straight up one-on-one, it would have took some time, and their plans definitely wouldn't have worked as well as they did. So I kind of do like the concept of just beating Kenjaku by outsmarting him, which really we haven't done in the series, which I wouldn't even know if it's outsmarting him, but more so of just putting the unexpected in his face and just continually blindsiding him with knowledge he wasn't prepared for. From his introduction and all the way to the Culling games, I mean, there's nothing really wrong I could put out there other than the fact that maybe I wanted a little bit more, which even then, the only thing I really wanted, and I'm surprised that Gege never really explored it, was like any interaction of Yuji and Kenjaku post Shibuya, especially with him being Yuji's mother. Like that's like really something that never was tackled, or wasn't like a storyline or even anything. It was kind of just thrown out there, which was a crazy twist, but then it never was explored on past that other than through Choso. But I would never rate him and put him as like garbage or, you know, lower tier, B tier, C tier, nothing like that. Just because reading him weekly and even reading it in a binge, he still hit as a final villain. It's just that his conclusion just kind of needed a little bit more oomph to it. In terms of all-time villains, I have no idea where he's ranking. I mean, that's for everybody's personal subjective choices. But for me, I mean, I don't know if he's top 15 or 20. I really got to look at the list. But in terms of the modern day, last 10, even 12 years or so, I would definitely put him up there as one of the more memorable ones and well thought out one. If you enjoyed this video, go ahead and leave a like and subscribe. I'll let y'all in the next one. Leave a comment if you enjoyed this type of video and your thoughts on Kenjaku.
Hey. Yeah. Kim Jong, yeah.